Welcome to the show, everyone. Thanks for being here tonight. Got a great show planned for you tonight. We're going to be talking to Bill, and Bill comes to us from New York. He's going to be sharing some encounters he's had on his property. A lot of weird things going on this property. It's been in the family forever, and it's a large piece of property. I believe it's 75 acres, and he could never explain what was going on until one day his son was frantic and called him to come home and explained to him what he had seen on the property. Very fascinating account. We'll also be talking to Russell Acord from Expedition Bigfoot. And Expedition Bigfoot actually airs tonight, Sunday night, 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on the Travel Channel. And if you don't have cable, I don't know this for sure, but if you don't have cable, it's probably going to be on Hulu. So if you don't have cable, check out Hulu. Expedition Bigfoot with Russell Acord. He'll be giving us some behind-the-scenes things that happened, and I'm excited to see what those guys found. I know a little bit about what they found, but I promised I wouldn't talk about it. But we'll go into some of that tonight. If you've had an encounter and you'd like to be on the show, shoot me an email. My email address is wes@sasquatchchronicles.com. And if you get a chance, check out sasquatchchronicles.com. You can become a member and get additional shows. Let's jump into it tonight. I want to welcome Bill to the show. Bill, thanks for coming on.
Hi, how are you, Wes?
I'm doing well. I really appreciate you being here. And I know you've had some things going on and around your property for a while out there in New York. When did all of this start, Bill? And can you kind of start walking us into when things got strange?
Okay. Yeah, well, I moved to this property 27 years ago, and it kind of, since day one, it was kind of, there was certain areas, there's 75 acres here, and it's just certain areas gave me, the creeps, and so we started, avoiding these areas, and, it, of course, got brushy, and nature took over, but, we didn't really pay attention to the places we didn't want to go, so we had other areas that we used to camp in all the time. And in 2005, we were camping. We have this pond, big 1.5 acre pond, and it's beautiful down there. We kept it mowed and like a park. We were camping with my family, my wife and 3 kids at the time, and 2:00 in the morning, my wife, I mean, this is kind of crazy, but, my wife had to pee, and so she went over a little bit, squatted down to pee, and she goes, "Oh my God, Bill, look, a glowworm." And as soon as she said that, a roar, howl, I can't really describe it, Les. It was a scream of some magnitude that, shook us, pretty badly. I've been around the lions at the zoo, and they've roared during their feeding time, and this was a lot louder and a lot more aggressive, I want to say. I don't really know how to describe it, but it was terrifying. I'll say that. And it's like nothing I've ever heard.
Yeah. How far away do you think it was when it went off, when it vocalized?
It was so, Wes, it was so loud. It felt like it was all around me. But if I had to estimate, it was maybe a couple hundred feet away. Because when it screamed, I screamed out, it like in fear. I was like, "Hey," and it was just completely silent. Now keep in mind, this was like July. The frogs were going, the insects. And when this thing vocalized, everything stopped. Oh crap, it's here. That's a feeling I got. Everything just went still and silent. And when I screamed out, "Hey," I heard kaboosh in our pond, like a stone, and stone is pretty, it's everybody knows what that sounds like, and it was big. And I was like, "Oh my God," and so I look over, my wife is in the fetal position, what in the hell was that, and we pretty much got the idea that it wanted us out of there, whatever it was. We didn't know at the time. So we grabbed the kids and left. And we left in the middle of the night. It was like 2:00 in the morning. It was terrifying. So that was kind of like the start of it. And coincidentally, we never camped down there again. And I'll tell you the God's honest truth, I never camped again. To be honest with you, I never had the desire. I don't know. I know they kind of took that from us, but
yeah, it kind of rattles you when you hear the way they vocalize, and especially when one roars or screams at you. And I were talking about that yesterday, and I was telling you, I mean, it shakes your liver. I mean, I don't know how else to put it. You know what I mean?
You're absolutely right. And yeah, because, well, like I was saying, I used to work on an explosives team, and, the blast would rattle you. And that's what it was like. It would just, it rattled my head, my teeth. I mean, it was amazing, and so that was that incident. And from there, my family, of course, they're doubters, and they, weren't open to the idea of anything else. And to me, honestly, it sounded primate and human, quality to the voice. I got a vision that it was a female of some sort. And it wasn't a cat. We came home and, man, we were like looking through the internet for sounds, and it wasn't a cougar, which reportedly they have it here in New York, but, I have never seen one, but, it wasn't a cougar, it wasn't a bear, the normal animals. And we kind of stumbled across later on, months later, like the supposed Bigfoot sounds, and I got chills, it was very close. Not right on, but very close. I was like, wow, that's it, So then my kind of journey into getting answers started. And,
and before you get into your sun sighting, and I understand wanting to search, I mean, and it's a lot different than, like, I've heard foxes make some weird sounds, but coyotes make odd sounds too. They don't just, whoop and howl. They make a coyote makes a lot of weird sounds.
Oh, absolutely.
And I think the difference is when you hear these things go off, it hits you like a baseball bat, not like a normal, felines out there make horrific sounds. They may be weird and odd, but they don't hit you like a baseball bat. You know what I mean? I don't know if that made any sense or not.
It absolutely does. Yeah, I agree with that totally. I mean, it really did. It, like, I nearly almost peed my pants. I mean, I hate to say that, but it was vibrating the inside of and plus fear probably. But I tell you, I was on the verge. But so that was that incident, and just it was kind of quiet for a few years. Nothing. Of course, we didn't camp down there, and we kind of left that alone. We've been like, over the years, if we feel, strange about a piece of this property that we're on, we'll kind of avoid it. And really, it's all overgrown now. It's just.
What are some of the other odd things that are going on there? I know you've been roared at. What other things made you think this might be one of the, might be a Sasquatch?
Well, there's been, we recently, like last year, actually started getting, like tree breaks. And I guess I've noticed them in the past, but I didn't really attribute that, until I started to research, and until it really started happening right up by my house. There was, my son and I used to shoot BB guns, and it was it was probably 3.5 inches, 4 inches around, and it was kind of sparse. There was not a whole lot of leaves on it, and we'd hang cans from there and shoot BB guns at it from the house here. Well, one night, we wake up the next day, and the thing is snapped right over. It was a green tree, and just snapped over like 6.5 feet up in the air, and I'm looking at it, and I was a union laborer, so I know about wood and the strengths of wood and stuff, and I'm looking for a knot or some, possible thing that could have broken, and it wasn't. It was like in the strong part of the tree. And I was like, okay, well, that's kind of weird, and it's pointing towards our house, which is kind of weird in itself. And so I would call home. I work second shift, so I'd call home at night. It's let them know I'm coming home, and my son answers and he goes, "Hey, Dad, be careful, because I have to there's a little bit of a walk to my place because there's a gully that kind of runs down through our property. So I walk over a little bridge into our house, and he goes, well, when you're coming home, be kind of careful, because the dog was going crazy, and I used to have a big Newfoundland, and he was going nuts. And he looked outside, and he hears this tree cracking, being pushed over. I'm like, really? And he's like, yeah, so kind of keep your eyes open or whatever. Well, I did, and I was looking around coming back home. I didn't see anything. Well, the next day I kind of looked outside, and there was a cherry tree out there that was probably, I don't know, 8 inches in diameter, pushed right over. I mean, about 4 foot from the ground. It was green. It had, fruit on it, and it was just pushed over, broken over, basically. So I started putting two together. There's physics in the forest, and it has to abide by, and I'm just seeing different things. And
it's a little unnerving. It's almost like they're kind of coming up to the house pretty close, really. I mean,
yeah, they are.
Oh.
Yes. Yeah. And actually, after that happened, a smaller tree was pushed over the trail that I walk home with. And I'm like, well, what the heck is going on here? It makes you question your sanity, really. I don't really know, until my son saw the creature, and then that this has given us a whole new.
Yeah, tell us about that. How did what was he doing, and what happened?
Well, it was Thanksgiving Day. I was going to my sister's, and he's 17 years old, and he didn't feel like going, and he was like, well, I'm going to stoke the fire and take the dog for a walk, and just hang around home by myself. And I'm like, well, okay, that's fine. I don't care. So I go to Thanksgiving dinner, and my older son comes up to me, and he was like, Dad, we need to get the F out of here right now. And now my older son is he's a straight-laced kid, and he does not, I've never heard him swear. And he says, this is no BS, Dad. We have to leave right now. I'm like, well, what's going on? He's like, just get in the car, and I could hear his voice cracking. I'm like, okay, well, calm down, we're leaving, and I'm like, quickly say goodbye, and we get in the car, and he goes, Dad. He's like, Jet saw a Bigfoot. I'm like, what? He's like, yeah, he saw it down by the creek. It was, you want me to give you the topography of the land, or?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. Well, it's 75 acres. It's a lot of thick hardwood forests and a lot of old, patchy farm fields that they used to do wheat and hay and stuff. And now it's all overgrown with big, some honeysuckle bushes and goldenrod. I mean, it's very, very thick. You can hardly walk through it really in places. And I kind of like that, it was kept the animals around. I felt like, and I never let anybody hunt here, and I never hunted here. And it was just a place for the deer to rest during hunting season and stuff. And there's a gorge, kind of like we were talking yesterday, if you were to pour water and sand and it cuts a groove through and it weaves back and forth like a snake pattern. That's how it is, halfway through our property here. And there's a flat spot where it kind of levels out. The gorge comes kind of to an end, and then there's a little, and on that flat spot I made a little roadway, and we take our tractor and stuff around and our ATVs, and on that edge there's a waterfall. It's probably, I don't know, 12, 15 feet deep there. And because it's a washout gully over storms, so it doesn't run heavy all year round. It's right now in the wintertime, it's very, it's low running. So my son was taking the dog for a walk, and he comes around the left side of the trail, and the dog is acting funny, like scared, whimpering, tail between its legs, like pushing him back. And he was like, well, come on, let's go, and he presses on, and the dog's still kind of staying in that area. And this is probably 20 feet away from the spot, the falls. So my son goes down to the falls, and he hears breathing, like big breaths, big breaths back and forth, ooh, ooh, like that. And he's kind of like, what the heck? What is that? And he looks upstream, didn't see anything. And when he goes to turn his head back around and look downstream, right from the base of the falls, there's a little concave area there from where the water would rush down and kind of wash it away. So it was like flat slate. And there's a tree right there, a big tree, and it's all the roots are into the bank. So like a little cove right there. Well, he sees the Bigfoot dart from that area, heads back to it, and it dart. Well, one detail I did want to say before I forget is he said when it was breathing before it took off, it made one last deep inhale, like it was ready to run. And my older son was like, I think that's like a sprinter's technique, where they're getting their body filled with oxygen for like a burst of energy, And I'm like, wow, I never knew that, And so it takes off like a shot. And he said, well, we have horses. And he said that, Dad, this thing took off like faster than our horse, just a shot. If you spook a horse, it'll lunge forward, and that's what it did. And it took like one huge leap. And we went down there the next day to kind of map it all out. But yeah, that was about 15 feet, 12 to 15 feet. It was just one jump. And he said it turned back, its whole body turned back and looked at him and had like this surprised look, and he said the mouth kind of was like, and of course he was frozen. He did the same thing. And he said it just hunched over, like with its feet underneath him, and ran just like a bullet, he said, down the creek. And only in the water. He did not touch a stone. And it's like, I don't know, it's 2 feet wide there where the water comes through, and it's very shallow. And he stayed right in the water. And it kind of snakes down through there. And I'm like, he said it looked like a cat, like a snake, something slithering. The movement was unbelievable. He said it was so fast and fluid. And he told me it was like he had practiced this and done it a million times before. And I mean, I can only speculate what he was doing there. I don't know if he was getting a drink or, I imagine they stand and hide during the day. I don't really know, obviously, but.
Yeah. Did your son describe what he saw? I mean, did he tell you in detail what he saw as far as its features and what it looked like?
Yes. Yeah. Very, very detailed. He said it was a reddish brown, like a burnt amber color. He said it was darker on the back, but he thought that was because of the water, because it had its back to the falls. And he said that was kind of wet and dark. He said that the legs were enormous. Obviously, you've heard it 1,000 times before. The arms were just incredibly large and just big. I have a chestnut horse, and he said, Dad, it was like the size of this horse. It was just incredibly muscular. And I said, did it touch the ground at all? Like a cat would touch the ground to like push off of anything. He's like, no. He launched over, and his arms were swinging back and forth, and his legs were like flipping in the back. It was kind of a weird. His hand was kind of like a flick, like a basketball player would flick a basketball, and his feet were doing the same thing. And he said it just right down the creek and disappeared. And he did hear the thump of the feet. I asked him, did you hear? And he said, yeah, it was like thump, 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 real quick. And the face he described it like a gorilla. With a smushed nose, more of like a a human-esque nose, but he could see part of the nostrils were showing, and it had a long, the fur was about 4 inches all the way over his body. He said it was like a jacket that was way too tight for a bodybuilder, and it was just skin tight, and that's what it looked like. And he did say that when the thing turned, he saw his nipple. I don't know. he kind of added that in, I was like, wow, that's incredible. I can't even believe that,
And when he said that, did he think it was a female, or did he think it was a male, or did he even say?
But he definitely thought it was male. He did not think it was a female. It wasn't like a female's breast or whatever. It was tight, like a man, And
how far away from the house is this? I mean, I realize 75 acres is a big piece of land, but how close to the house was this encounter?
What's a football field? Is that 100 yards? Probably 300 yards from the house.
Wow, so really close. I mean, really close when you think about the grand scheme of things.
Yeah.
How's he doing? I mean, did it affect him? Did it?
I tell you what, when I came home, he was like teared up, and he was shaking like a leaf, and my son's really shy, and he doesn't like attention so much, and all that. And this was really kind of, I believed him immediately. I saw his reaction, and I know my kid, and just the details, because he's not researching the Bigfoot, matter of fact, they thought I was crazy, that I was researching into that side of things when of the things that were going on here. But he's, obviously he's changed his mind, and my good friend came up the next day, because I was like, I needed to tell somebody. This is like an incredible shock to the system, especially as the father. You're supposed to be the protector of your family, and I was like, it could have killed my son, and there's not a thing I could do about it, and there's not a thing I can do about it right now, talking to you on the phone. I mean, who knows what'll happen next. I'm kind of just, but my friend came up, and we walked around. He's an avid hunter, and he knows signs of animals and stuff. And he stood down where my son saw it, and we took a tape measure, and he lifted his hand up. My friend's pretty big. He's 6'3", big shoulders, and it was 8 foot tall. And I said, well, what about the width of the shoulders about, And he goes, well, it was kind of like crunched in, like in a flexed position. He goes, but, and he started widening his arms, and it was about 3.5 feet, and I said, how thick was he in the chest area, Of course, my friend's being smart ass. He sticks his chest way out, and he's like, no, not even close. You got to go bigger than that. That's like over 2 feet, 2'4", actually, we kind of got. But, so, that's been that whole situation. And
it's a little unnerving. It's hard enough to have an encounter, but when you have it on your own property, it's a whole different ballgame, especially when people have these things on their property. Has there been anything else Sasquatch related that's happened? I mean, since this sighting, has anything else happened?
Well, the other night we were talking there, I definitely heard a popping of wood. I guess it would be the wood knocking. I don't know. It was like pop, pop. It was loud, and like I said, it was like 1:30 in the morning. 'Cause I work second shift, so I don't go to bed until late, and I was just in bed, kind of settling down, and I heard it. And it's dark up here. People think New York is, New York City, but we're near like the Pennsylvania border, and it's heavily forested here. There's a lot of room.
Oh yeah, no doubt. New York's definitely a beautiful state. I mean, there's places in New York that look like Washington.
Yeah.
Has anyone ever seen the lights on the property, or has anyone ever mentioned seeing lights? Just out of my own curiosity.
Yeah, my mother has. We live on the same big piece of property here. They're right down the road. And like when we first moved here, she saw it. She used to have a burning barrel there, and this ball of light came up from behind the burning barrel and just kind of hovered there and floated around and disappeared. And so, I mean, at the time, and that happened twice to her. It right in her yard, basically. I mean, she's got a humongous yard, but it right in her area there. And that happened twice. But, you know, we were thinking at the time, you know, ball lightning possibly. I mean, I still don't know, you know. But that was the only lights I've ever seen here.
Yeah, it's so strange. You know, I had Bethany on Friday night show, the members only show, and she was talking about very similar stuff to what you're talking about, except for it actually came up to her window and was staring at her child. And that's the first time she had actually seen it. But one thing that's odd is when you start asking people about these balls of light, if they have Sasquatch around, I was telling Bethany the same thing. I don't think anyone's ever told me no. I've never seen the lights. Every single time, someone in the family's seen it, you know, and it's so bizarre. You know, and you try to go to. I'm like you. Is it? I thought, well, maybe it's a ball of lightning, and then after looking into this for a while, you know, ball of lightning's pretty rare. And as much as people are seeing these balls of light, I don't think it's a ball of lightning flying around. That's my own opinion.
Yeah. I mean, I think you're right. Like I say, my mother saw it. I've been here 27 years. I've never seen it, you know, and I really don't know much, you know, about that. But, you know, it's interesting. And there's something to this, you know, I really don't know what it is.
What do you think that they are, Bill? I know you haven't seen one yet, but I mean, you've been looking into this. Your son gave you a really great description, really.
Yeah.
What do you think that they are? What's your own personal opinion?
Well, I mean, honestly, from my heart, I believe that the answer's in the DNA. I mean, I think that it's a hybrid of something else. I really do. Probably angelic, you know, to be honest with you. I hate to say that, and I know it sounds crazy, but...
That doesn't sound that crazy. I mean...
I don't know, you know, it just... But my son definitely believes it's animal. I hope he's right. That's what I want. I can deal with an animal, you know, but something more. I mean, like you say, the lights and everything that goes along with this creature, you know. And my son's only 17. You know, I'm 50 years old, so he hasn't seen everything yet, you know. And he described it as an animal. But, you know,
yeah, and I was telling you, yeah, and it's like I was telling you the other night, Bill. I mean, if he said anything else besides an animal, I'd be a little shocked. I think your average person who runs into one by accident, they see an animal. It's an ape. It's a oversized monkey. It's sometimes people will say, well, it remind me of primitive man, but I would say your average person is going to say they saw an animal. You had mentioned something the other night, some other weird thing that happened, and we didn't really go into it.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, this is a weird story. My friend from work, we work together, and obviously over the years, I've been kind of asking around, and you'd be, well, you probably wouldn't be surprised, but people would be surprised that when you get people alone and you ask them, like, have you seen anything weird in your life or anyone you know? There are people that have seen weird stuff, you know. So I'll ask if I get alone with someone. I'll have a conversation and ask them about these different subjects, you know. But this guy at work, he lives in the same town as me, and I used to have an old Volkswagen Beetle 73. And I would come home and the speed limit was 55 and I'd go 55. You know, I didn't want to push it. I'm in a bug, you know, and he has a supercharged truck and he'd get behind me and tail me and pass me. And this was every night. We'd mess around, you know. And so one night I see he's staying back a ways, you know, 5 car lengths or whatever. And I'm like, you know, he's not going to screw with me tonight, you know. I just kind of laughed about it. And then I look back a couple minutes later, and I don't see his truck lights, and it's before his turn to get to his house. And so I didn't think anything of it. You know, I went home, and the next day when I come in, he caught me by myself, and he's like, "Hey, Bill," and this guy knows nothing about the subject of Sasquatch, anything like that. He's a country guy. Doesn't really, he's not really into all that jazz. And he said, I've heard that, you were talking about this animal you've seen, the Bigfoot or whatever, And I said, yeah. And he goes, well, the other night, he goes, I was following in, and he said, well, I thought I'd give you a break, and stay behind you and just cruise home. It's like, I don't know why. I just was, and he goes, did you see that thing standing on the side of the road? I'm like, no, standing? No, I didn't see anything. Well, my Beetle at that time, it was an old car, so it had like a cross-eyed front light on the driver's side, so I couldn't really see the edge of the road, and I wasn't paying attention. I was probably thinking about why he wasn't on my tail, And he said, yeah, you passed by. He goes, I came up and saw it standing there, and before I got to it, it lunged out and hit the center of the road. I hit the ass end of it, and it went right over the guardrail on the other side. I'm like, what? And he goes, yeah. I said, well, what was it, a bear, or what was it? And he goes, I don't know, but it was, I said, well, what color was it? And he said brown. Well, we don't have brown bears here. We have black, And he's like, brown, and his hair was kind of shuffled and kind of curly under his hard hat. And he goes, kind of like moppy on his head, like my hair is sticking out like this, only red. And he goes, he didn't see the face. It was whipping its head back and forth. It was looking at my car, looking at his car. It was like whipping its head back and forth, he said, so it couldn't really see the face. And he didn't see a tail. And he said it did not move like a bear. And so he hit the ass end of this thing. It went up over the fence. Well, he stops, turns around to the site. He's thinking about what he hit. He didn't recognize it. And he sees a hunk of hide on the side of the road with hair on it, It was. He goes down to pick it up, and he said, just as plain as we're talking right now, something said in my head, you pick that up, and I will look in your windows and kill your dogs. And he's got little beagles, and he loves these guys like his own children, And he's like, I stood right back up and jumped in my truck and left and thought, okay, well, tomorrow morning on the way back to work, I'll grab it, Well, he comes back the next day and it's gone. He doesn't see it on the side of the road anymore. It could have been anything to taking it, obviously, but I just thought that was kind of weird. And he, just the way what he described, I'm like, I don't know, man. I don't know what to tell you. It doesn't sound like anything I've ever seen, but that's that story. But it just the way he said, as plain as we're talking right now, it spoke in my head. And I'm like, huh. So.
Yeah, I mean, you hear that a lot. I mean, I've heard that. Les Stroud talked about that on episode 500 that I did, and I wasn't prepared for Les to go into that. I mean, we were at his house doing the podcast, and I remember afterwards, I told you this the other night. I said to Les, Les, do you want me to cut all that out about? And he said, no. Why would you cut it out? And I said, well, I just don't. I was trying to be nice, and then I felt kind of dumb about saying it, but, and Les was like, no, he goes, I'm telling you, that's what happened. That's exactly what happened. And, Les has nothing to gain by saying that.
No.
But you hear a lot of people say that they were mind spoke to.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
It makes you wonder what's going on, so bizarre. And you'll hear the Mindspeak thing. You can usually pick up when someone's crazy within about 20 seconds. You can usually figure out, okay, this person, there's something's going on here.
Yeah.
I would say most of the time, though, when I hear about Mindspeak, it's from country boy hunters. It's from police officers. It's from, and there's even been people who are like, hey, I don't mind coming on talking about my encounter, but can we leave out the whole Mindspeak thing? Because the encounter is weird enough, and I don't want people to think I'm more crazy than seeing a Bigfoot, And it really does make you wonder what's going on with that Mindspeak thing. Especially the way you describe this guy. He sounds like a good old boy. And he's talking about Mindspeak, you know what I mean?
Exactly what he is. I mean, he's like he used to be an over-the-road truck driver. He's got millions of miles on him, and he's an older guy, and he's older than me. And, it just to hear him say that was kind of, it was different. It was weird, and that's where I pick up this possibly, I don't know what you want to call it, supernatural side of it. That Mindspeak right there, and like the premonition we got when we got screamed at, like, get the hell out of here, I've never gotten that from any other animal. I've been around the block, and I don't know. Not even the dog, a ferocious dog barking at you. You don't really get the intent of, you know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah, no, I know exactly what you mean. And it's so hard to tell with these things. There is a supernatural side to these things, and anyone that tells you any different is probably lying to you, or they have some weird agenda. What all of that means, I don't know. What this Mindspeak thing that goes on, it's like when I had Blake on, and we were talking about Mindspeak, and I said, Blake, the reason I don't, I'm not saying I couldn't be Mindspoke to, but I'm leery of all of that, because the only time you hear about Mindspeak is with demons, a lot of alien encounters. They talk about Mindspeak, a lot of alien encounters. And then sometimes you'll hear with Sasquatch. And that's why there's such a weird divide, I think, and I won't go too long on this tangent, but that's why there's such a weird divide in the Bigfoot world, because your average person, just like your son that ran into one, is going to say they ran into an animal. And then you get this other side of it where some weird things go on that no one can really explain what's going on. You know what I mean? With the lights and the Mindspeak and some of these other weird things. I've never experienced the Mindspeak, but I've heard from enough people to where I think it probably goes on. Who's talking to you? What's talking to you? I don't know. I can't answer any of those questions.
I know, that's the crazy part of it. This whole thing is crazy, and I feel crazy even talking about it, really, to tell you the truth. But
you're not
real.
Crazy. You're definitely not crazy. And it's like I was telling you the other night too, Bill, like with Bethany on Friday night show, kind of a similar situation to what you're in. Huge property. It's, been in the family. Everyone kind of lives on the property. And her mom, for the longest time, thought her house was haunted. And I used to hear that a lot. I started hearing that a lot several years ago. And I would ask people, well, why do you think it's haunted? And I think people try to find answers for what makes sense. There's weird things going on here. I don't really know what's going on, but it must be haunted. I mean, something's hitting the house at 2:00 in the morning. It's kind of like poltergeist activity. There's weird lights showing up. So I could see why people would think a place is haunted, until you run into one of these things. Then you realize real quick it's not haunted.
Yeah, it's a crazy deal. Can I ask you, what did she do in her situation? Honest to God, we've talked about moving out of here. I mean, we've had like the family meeting to sit down, and we're like, what do you want to do? Do we want to stay here, or do we want to move? I don't know what the heck to do at this point. I guess we can't live in fear, but
yeah. I mean, there's certain things that you can do. I mean, your normal things that people generally do. And I was telling Bethany down south, they call them the booger lights. It's where the boogeyman comes from. And you can buy booger lights, and they're basically just huge, not spotlights, but they're just real heavy lights. I would light the place up. The other thing that generally gets them to back off is game cams, and the cheaper the better. You want, I mean, when I say the cheaper the better, the ones the hunters don't want, because they're loud. I think that they could probably see in that infrared spectrum. Even if they can't, I can tell you from being a hunter, we crossed over one time and I told this story on Friday night, but Woody and I were out hunting. We were in the middle of nowhere, and we were in a national forest, and we had accidentally crossed over to private property. And I didn't realize we had crossed over to private property. There was no fence. There was no signs. There was nothing. And we'd been out hunting for about 3 weeks. And I was telling the audience and Bethany on Friday that it's bizarre when you get out there and you're in the forest, there's no cell phones, there's no nothing. Your senses really do improve. As bizarre as that sounds, your hearing gets better, your vision gets better, everything improves. And we were coming up over this hill, and I remember I stopped, and I was telling Woody, I was like, do you hear that? And he's like, yeah, it sounds like a motor or something. He goes, I don't know what that is. And as we were coming up over this hill, it was a game cam trying to take pictures of us, and you could hear it winding and snapping pictures. But I could hear it before we got to it. I could hear it. So I think if you get a bunch of game cams, set them up around the property. I don't know why they avoid them, but they do. That would be my advice to you.
Right. I'm gonna take that advice. Yeah, because I just want if it is an animal, who knows? But I want to set up a perimeter like this is mine, and you can have, I won't mess around in the far reaches of this place. They could have it. It's just. Yeah, that's weird.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, with these things, there's really no way to make them leave. I don't know that you could make them leave.
Yeah,
I've talked to a lot of people who light the place up, put up game cams, and all activity stops. Why? I don't know. It's weird.
Right.
I also had a Native American one time tell me, and I kind of chuckled when she said this, but she said, go to the feed store and buy sulfur. And put like a boundary line around your property of sulfur, and they won't cross it. And I remember thinking, oh, that's kind of weird. And one lady I talked to on the East Coast, they would smash out the lights. She would put up lights, they'd smash them out. She'd put up game cams, they'd rip them down. And it was one of those things to where I didn't know what to, buy a gun, and reload. When you fire, reload. And I had mentioned the sulfur thing to her because she was, out on a farm. She's in a feed store a lot. She goes, I'm going to try that. So she put sulfur around her yard, and she said they won't come on the property anymore. They won't cross over that for whatever reason. And she said when it rains, you got to go out there and put it back down. But another weird thing, I have no idea. Is it coincidence? Is it?
Yeah. Why sulfur?
Yeah, why sulfur? It makes no sense.
Why sulfur? That's wild. Who the heck knows?
It is odd.
This is a crazy subject, boy. I'll tell you. You could go down a rabbit hole. That's why I say, if you want to go down the biggest rabbit hole in the world, it's going to be in spirituality. And I think that these things have something to do. They're in that realm. How? I don't know. But and the dog man, the rake, the other things that people are saying, and I can't call them crazy.
Yeah,
it's like they haven't seen it.
Yeah, it's like, and I thought about doing a show on it, but I'm sure there would be outrage if I did. But a lot of this stuff goes throughout history. I mean, even Sasquatch, there's things you and I were talking about, some of the ancient writings, where it sounds like they're describing a Sasquatch. They don't obviously use the term Sasquatch or Bigfoot or anything like that, but what they're describing sounds like a Sasquatch. Same thing with the Dogman. Dogman, it's not a new thing that's popping up. This thing's been around for a long time. And and it goes by so many different names. Same thing with the rake. I know the rake, that title was created in the 90s, but the rake, goes by ghoul, it goes by troll, it goes by, there's a lot of different names that it goes by throughout history. People have seen it. The question to be answered, though, is why are we seeing these more now today? Why do they seem to be popping up? Is it our culture, everyone's talking online, or is it that we're seeing it more? I think people are seeing it more.
I think you're right, though. I mean, is the veil thinning, like we were talking about last night, Is the veil thinning to, another dimension? I don't, who knows? I hate to think I know it all, and I don't. But it's a weird subject. Oh, yeah.
It is weird, and it gets weirder. I was talking to the executive director of Expedition Bigfoot. It's coming out on the travel. I'll be having Russ on talk about it. And I remember when he first came to me, and we were talking, and he was like, "Well, I'm going to get all these scientists together and all these primatologists together, and on and on and on." And he wanted to prove scientifically that this thing is out there, to the science world. And I said, I'll give you one piece of advice: keep an open mind, and you're going to hear some weird stuff. I just told him, this subject gets weirder and weirder and weirder as you get into it. And the more you get into it, the weirder it gets. And it's hard to explain certain things. people can pass off and give you explanations. I said, you're going to talk to a lot of Bigfoot researchers, and you're going to hear them regurgitate the same answers over and over and over again. And if you really stop and think about it, none of it makes any sense. But do I think it's going on? The weird stuff? Yeah, I think it's going on. Absolutely, it's going on.
Yeah, not everybody can be lying. Everybody's not a liar and a hoaxer.
Well, it's like it goes back to my point on Friday night show when I had Bethany on. I hadn't asked her if there was anything weird that went on the property. I just said, well, is there anything else strange that ever happened on that property beyond Sasquatch? And there was kind of a long pause, and then she started telling me about the lights. And that's what I was telling the executive producer. I said, you're going to find when people have these things on their property, ask them if they've seen the lights. Prove me wrong. Start asking people if they've seen the lights. And he started doing that. And they even, well, I can't get into it, but so, who knows? But it's a fascinating subject. It's definitely a rabbit hole that you can go down. Let me know. Keep me up to date on that property, will you, Bill? Let me know.
I will.
If anything, anything else happens. Try the lights. Try the game cams. And
so I'm going to try doing some of those things. I might even try the salter.
Yeah, I mean, and you can go into Home Depot and buy like a 4-pack of, and again, the cheaper the better. But you can buy a 4-pack of game cams and just put them up around the house and just see if it stops. I bet it's going to stop.
Yeah, that would be nice.
Yeah.
I did want to tell you before I get off with you. Like, I'm an artist, and my son asked me, do you think you could do like a police sketch, you know what I'm saying, of the face of this animal, so we can kind of like get. So I did that. I don't know. I could send that to you if you wanted to see.
Yeah, please do. I'd love to see it.
Yeah, I'll text it to you. But I just wanted to one of the things.
Yeah. Please do. And the only other advice I'd give you, your son did the right thing. Just leave. If he runs into it again, or any of your other children run into it, tell him to treat it like a bear. Turn around and slowly leave an area. Don't run, just leave. And they'll probably leave. 90% of the time, they're probably going to leave. They're probably going to do exactly what the Sasquatch did. It probably didn't realize your son was even there. That's why it gave the crap look,
Yes, I think the dog kind of let him know what was going on, and I did fail to mention, I told you about it last night, but I forgot to tell you now, but when he was walking away, he said he was just like his head down. He was processing the whole thing. Well, he gets halfway up to the house and it roared. He said it screamed, like booming scream, and it was pissed. That's what he said, was his exact words. And it was pissed. And I'm like, wow, maybe it was, he thought that it was pissed that he saw him, and it was just like letting out some adrenaline dump, but I forgot to mention that detail to you. But,
I'm glad you mentioned that. I don't know. I've heard the roar before, and it's kind of like a lion roaring, except for louder, and it seems to vibrate you when it does it. I probably heard it a half a mile away, maybe a mile away. And even at that distance, I was thinking, oh, crap, I got to get out of here.
Oh, God. And that's what he said. He goes, it sounded like a howler monkey, but
it's
more
very close.
Deep. And
it's very close.
Yeah. And that's something.
I appreciate you coming on. Thank you again for your time and sharing what's going on in your property. I'd love an update. I'd love to know if the lights and the game cams work.
Yes, I'll keep in touch with you, Russ. I really thank you and appreciate your show too. I feel it's done better being able to talk to somebody that is not looking at me like, I'm a nut, or you know what I'm saying. So,
yeah, no, I don't think you're crazy at all. I've seen it, and I don't think I'm crazy. It's one of those things, but I understand the way you feel, because you do feel that way when you have weird stuff going on. You're like, am I losing it? Am I just checking out and I don't really realize I'm checking it? But you're not crazy. I mean, and after
it's a surreal feeling.
Yeah, it is, and like I said, within 20 seconds, you can usually tell if someone's crazy or not. And you'd be surprised. I talk to a lot less crazy people than you might think.
Oh, I'll bet. I tell you what turned my opinion was your clip that you have on your opening where the guy goes, "It was staring at me." You know, that one?
Oh, yeah, the 911 call.
It was looking at me. That guy's telling the truth. There's no doubt about that in my mind, you know?
Yeah, when you kind of look into that encounter, it wasn't just that one encounter. I mean, there was a lot more going on there, but I used to, I've heard it a million times now, but I used to laugh when the when the 911 operator goes, "Uh-oh." That's not really that's not really what you want to hear from a 911 operator, like, "Oh, crap,
No.
you're screwed."
No, you don't.
But I appreciate coming on again, Bill.
Well, thank you so much, Wes. I'll talk to you later.
Next up on the show, I want to welcome Russell Acord. Russell, thanks for coming on, man.
Thanks for having me, Wes. Love being on the show.
Yeah, I appreciate you being here. And for the audience out there, Russell's actually written 2 books. One is Footprints of a Legend, Bitterroot Series, Volume 1. You can pick it up on Amazon. And the other one is Bigfoot and the Tripwire, Footprints of a Legend, Bitterroot Series, Volume 2. Available now on Amazon. And Russell actually has a new show coming out, Expedition Bigfoot, on the Travel Channel. Before we get down to talking about that, Russell's also the founder. I feel like I'm just doing a resume for you, Russell.
Wow, thank you. I appreciate that.
Russell's also the founder of the International Bigfoot Conference, one of my favorite conferences, actually my favorite conference to go to, because it's so well put together and it's in a nice venue. And I've been to many conferences, but the International Bigfoot Conference is one of my favorites. Is that coming back for 2020, Russell?
Absolutely is. We're set up Labor Day weekend in Kennewick, Washington for that this year. Last year I was filming. I wasn't able to really put the energy into it that I needed to.
Yeah, and I'm looking forward to that. So Labor Day weekend 2020, I'm sure you'll come on and promote that more, and I'll be there. Tell us about this Expedition Bigfoot. How did you get involved? And kind of tell us a little bit about the show, because for the audience, if you have cable on the Travel Channel, I believe it's going to be on at 10 p.m.?
10 p.m. Eastern. So
Eastern.
You and I, we're on Pacific time, so it'll be earlier in the day. I believe it's 7 or 8 our time. And it's right after Dead Files on the Travel Channel.
Tell us about the show.
Well, I was approached by Travel Channel to play a role in a reality show where the first thing they said was, you got to be yourself. You know, we see that you're a researcher. We see that you have this attitude that everything is flesh and blood, and you have that military background. We want somebody that we can stick out there and not worry about being in the woods in the remote area and push out for days on end and know that you're going to be all right, and do research while and just see what you can find. And like anybody else on the planet, if Travel Channel calls and they offer you something like that, I was excited. I said, absolutely. You know,
of course.
So I didn't really know who the other cast members were until closer to when we actually were just going to go on location and start filming. And I had they told me that it was in Central Oregon somewhere. And many, many times over, they'd contact me on the phone asking me, you know, what would you do in this scenario? I mean, and I think a lot of it was just to make sure that I would be able to handle whatever came up. I got to meet the other cast on a phone call before the show, and it was just insane. We have Dr. Maria Mayer. She's a scientist, primatologist. She actually discovered the world's smallest primate. She's been all over the planet doing research that we could only dream of doing. She's really well-versed, super intelligent woman. And they wanted her on there because she wasn't going to be swayed by what looks like this or it looks like. She's very solid with it looks like anything, but isn't. You know, I want data. I want hard facts, and that was her superpower, because she wasn't going to be swayed in any direction, because she's got her PhD. You know, Dr. Maria is somebody who's not going to give you an opinion based on, you know, possibilities. She's going to tell you what the facts give her as far as information goes. So it was great having her on. We had RPG. He was Ryan is he has 2 different variances on how he believes Bigfoot exists. One is flesh and blood. He believes in the flesh and blood, but he also believes in the other part of it, the paranormal side. and I came in strictly flesh and blood. So it was nice to have that balance. You got a flesh and blood and paranormal, and a guy that's strictly flesh and blood, excuse me, and then you have the doctor who is not going to listen to either one of us. She's going to say, "Show me what you show, what there is, and I'll take it from there." So a good balance. And then we had we brought on Ronnie LeBlanc, which he has got a very, very strong thought process. Same as RPG. Ronnie has that paranormal one side, flesh and blood on the other, and he has a very, very strong Native American history background, and he's scary smart. He's so well versed in his research, and he was great to have on the team as well. So with us all being together, we had one guy that was doing the interviews and the organizing, everything. I mean, if we needed something in the field, he was on it. You know, if we needed equipment, and he brought in some of the most amazing high-tech equipment for us to do our research with. And it wasn't like he just brought a truckload of stuff and dumped it there and said, "Okay, guys, figure out how to use it." It was as we needed it. If we ran into something in the field that became an obstacle, "Hey, we'd like to look into this, but we're having difficulty. Do you have a solution for this?" And he had a contact that had created something for being able to pick up audio sounds that was going to be used in the military. It hadn't even been used, deployed yet in the military. I mean, this was stuff that you don't even get to see for audio. And we had just equipment that you'll see comes up in the show, that it would be nice if we could look at this, and he would come up with what we needed and supply it. It was amazing. And then the evidence that we were getting, we would get it to him, and he would take it out, and he would take it to the subject matter experts and say, "What does this sound like? What does this look like? What do you think of this?" And it was just, everybody was in constant motion. It was just a flurry of research.
Yeah, and I know just from some of the behind the scenes stuff, like I know the showrunner, and we've talked in depth. You and I have talked about the show, so I know more than what I'm playing off. But the first episode, so when people tune in tomorrow night, what can they expect? Is it more or less just a introduction? And do you guys find anything?
I can't give anything away.
Well, I want you to be vague. I mean, be vague. Yeah. Don't give away the farm.
We run into some things. We actually, there are some things that show up on that first episode, and then it seems like it just builds on top of itself each episode behind it, and it's just a ton of things that we anticipated. We're thinking, well, hopefully we'll find a footprint, or hopefully we'll hear sounds, or or maybe we'll see something. And what we ended up with was far exceeded our expectation. It was just amazing. The first episode, you'll get to meet everybody, kind of get a little feel for what's going on. Ronnie is not in the first episode. He comes in an episode or two later. And when he comes in like a powerhouse. It's just great. But you'll see things in the first episode that will give you kind of an introduction and overview, and you'll see kind of what we're about. It's about, it's not about hitting and missing and going and hitting a location and spending a day or two there and hoping to catch something on that spontaneous moment. We actually embedded ourselves for 3 weeks and started doing meticulous research in that area because of this algorithm that Bryce Johnson, who is our the guy that takes care of everything. He gets our equipment. He organizes all of it, and he's very, very present in the show. He talks to people and takes the evidence. So this algorithm was a way to determine where would be the best place to go, what would be the best time to get there, and increase our odds. I guess the reason for that is a lot of times you'll hear a story. Hey, it's March and we have this thing that happens, and it's something that if you look over time, historically, it's happened kind of in that same timeline. So this algorithm, it took a lot of data, a lot of testimonials, a lot of evidence, and historically put it all together and churned out these several hot spots in the Pacific Northwest, well, all over the U.S., but there was in our area, it gave us this location and a pretty good idea of the best time to be there. Well, the best time to be there for a sighting is to get there ahead of it.
Yeah, I agree. And you were out there, Russ. I know you went ghost for like a month. And when you came back, I was like, where you been? So I know that you were living out there. It's not like you're down at the Four Seasons and standing in front of the cameras when it's time for a shoot and you're back at the Four Seasons. I know you were out there. And Central Oregon's no joke, man. That's rough country out there. That's real country out there. And I know some of the things that happened in the show, and I know that you're a flesh and blood guy. Without giving too much away, did you for a moment stop and go, maybe there's something else weird going on here that I can't quite explain? Maybe a little bit more than flesh and blood?
I'll tell you this. I didn't say maybe. There were things that happened that I love it that I can't understand it, that I didn't understand it. There were some surprises that I was not prepared for. I was forced to face things that I did not understand, which I'm good with that. I do research, yeah, but trust me, I'm the last person to say I'm a know-it-all. I learn from everybody I have contact with. So when I was out in the field and I was faced with things that did not line up in my mind logically, that fit my narrative, and I knew in an instant, I thought, oh, this is not my wheelhouse. Very uncomfortable here. So I would call in Ronnie, hey, Ronnie, this is definitely your expertise. What the heck is this? And there was no hesitation. Oh, well, that's whatever. And I thought, okay, all right. And so I've grown a lot with this expedition, truly grown. And you'll see throughout the episodes that as much as I resist it, and I'm still that flesh and blood. Yeah, if it leaves a footprint, it's got body weight. If it's got body weight, it's got to have food. If it's got to have food, it's got flesh and blood. And and it's easier for me, caveman style, to figure all that out and come to terms with it. Yeah, but I didn't get to stay in my comfort zone through this whole season. So this was great. It was really a growing experience for me.
Yeah, and I know there's a lot of weird things that happen to you guys out there and to you, Russ, when you're out there and the crew and everything else. And I don't want to give too much away, but it's funny. The show, I guess you'd call him the showrunner. When him and I first talked, this is several months back, I was telling him, I said, the more you get into this, the weirder it gets. There's a lot of weird things that seem to pop up around this subject. And I'm not talking about the show at the moment, but I was just talking to, I had several witnesses on where they have these things on their property. And my next question after they tell me about the Bigfoot is, have you seen the lights? I've never had anyone tell me no. Everyone always says yes. And What are the lights? Are they related? Who knows? It's a weird coincidence. You can't really say that they're related. It's more or less just a weird coincidence. But my whole point of the whole thing was, I was telling the showrunner, the more you get into it, the weirder it gets. And it seems like the more questions you have really than answers. Rarely do you ever go, oh, that's what that was. It seems like now you have, instead of one question, now you have 10. Now you have 50 questions. Now you have, so I'm excited to see it. I can't wait to check it out on the Travel Channel. How many episodes is there going to be? Do you know?
We have 8 episodes, 8 weeks in a row, Sunday night. And it progressively, it just gains speed, and the momentum comes at you, and it's just wild, the things that we come across. I've seen some of these shows, and that thing of, they say, well, you weren't really out in the woods by yourself. You got a camera crew and lighting. Let me tell you about this. I had one guy with me, and we had a destination of just going deep, 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 remote and far away. And he was amazing camera guy. He was ex-military, really had his, he was definitely in great shape because I challenged him. I wanted to go. And he got some really good footage. He was able to stay on top of everything that was going on. There was no light guy. There was no sound guy. There was nothing. It was just he and I. And it was very remote, days on end, sleeping in tents under the stars, and pouring rain, a lot of rain and lightning hitting. It's just what an experience. And you'll feel that in the show.
Yeah, I can't wait to see that. Like I said, I know some of the other shows always have, they always do, I'm going out solo. What they don't tell you is there's a guy with the boom mic, there's, the producer, there's 50 guys around this guy. He's not going out. And I know, because you were out there in the middle of nowhere. And I think even one time you drove back into town and had to call me, and we won't go into that. It was something for the show, but you were literally out in the middle of nowhere the whole time. Yeah. I'm excited. What are we going to see as far as evidence? And not specific, but I mean, is there audio? Is there going to be video? Was there footprint? I got to think how to ask that question. Will you be presenting evidence throughout these 8 episodes? I guess is my question.
A piece at a time, yes.
Yeah.
There's things to see visually, absolutely. There are things to hear audibly, yes. We did get some video footage that really it's bizarre. It is something that is walking on 2 legs. It's something that's moving in the darkness in a space that there was nothing else out there. Absolutely nothing. And it's just it was review pure from Dr. Maria. Some of her colleagues looked it over and surprised them. And the statement was it appears to be a gorilla-like creature far from its home. We did comparison the next day because I know exactly where I was sitting when I got this footage. And we did a size comparison because I went out, I had the instrument set up exactly where it was. I went out as far as where it was, and it was a very, very large thing, bigger than me and hot. So, I mean, you'll see in the show, what we captured on film is just amazing. Just absolutely amazing.
And for the people who don't know Russell's a pretty big old boy going out there. So, I mean, did it ever worry you? I mean, was there, by like week 2, you're like, when you were ever out there, were you ever thinking, what the hell am I doing? I'm going to go back. I got a beautiful wife at home. I'm going to go back. You know what I mean? Were you ever terrified, or was there ever a moment that you were like, we got to get out of here. This is nuts. This is bananas.
Okay, so if I tell you the truth, I have to give up my man card.
No.
No, realistically, there were some times in there that were a little bit hair-raising. And, I'm a military guy, and it takes a lot to shake me. There's things that happen on this show that literally rattled me and had me scratching my head and had me thinking, man, this could very well be the wrong place at the wrong time. I don't know if I want to deal with this right now. And it was a journey. It was truly a journey. And the worst thing about the show, I'll tell you right now, the worst thing about the show is when they said it's a wrap and you got to go home. there was so much stuff going on. I hated the fact that we had to leave that place. Just hated it.
Yeah, I can't wait to see it. Did Maria's opinion change? Because I know sometimes scientists, they, as you mentioned in the beginning, it's kind of like, well, I'm here to legitimize the whole thing. And right. Did her opinions change at all? Or that you know of? I guess it's more of a question for her.
I've heard people ask her that question, and I'm just going to do the best I can to quote what she says. She said that she was asked when she first went there, "Do you believe in Bigfoot?" And her reply was, "Ask me again in 3 weeks." So she came in just very objective, and she said that her thought process, and this is her saying this as best as I can quote it, but her thought process has definitely changed. There was a lot of things that happened that even scientifically was baffling. Just was amazing. So it was you'll see as you tune into the episodes as they progressively go on. It's just more and more build, and the things we found, you'll see, is just amazing.
Yeah, I can't wait to check it out. Again, it's on the Travel Channel, Expedition Bigfoot, Sunday night, 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Hopefully, I wondered if they'll do like a season 2. Because, there's really no good Bigfoot shows on that I can, out there. I mean, there's really nothing to watch.
If I have my way, it'll continue. And a lot of it has to do with, in the realistic world, I was out there doing research and loving the fact that they were documenting what we had found. That was, to me, was an amazing journey. But the facts are that it is about numbers. It's about, if we have a good year or a good season and people tune in and watch it and get involved in it, then it would definitely get us into multiple seasons.
What would be cool is if you came back every week and gave us a breakdown, because I know some of the things that happened, and I don't want to spoil it for anyone. I'd rather have them watch, because there is some good things that you guys got. There's some actually really good things that you guys got.
Yeah.
And I promised the showrunner I'd be careful on the questions I asked you, and I don't want to ruin the show, and I want it to be a success. And it'd be cool to have you back and give us a breakdown on what took place that week on the show. I don't know if you have time for it. I know you're a busy guy, but I'd love to have you back to once they see it, to hear your take on what actually was going on there. You know what I mean?
So we're going to do I'd be happy to. I would definitely, I'd be absolutely happy to. And we can and I'll clear it with the network and make sure that it's okay, because I'm certainly not going to give away anything that is not supposed to be given away. And the questions that might come up, it would be interesting to have that conversation. But I'd love that.
Cool.
If it's okay with them, I'm in.
Yeah, I'd be all for it, man. I'd be all for it. And I'm excited to see it. Like I said, I know of some of the things that happened, and I've talked to the showrunner, so I know some of the things that actually took place. And I just can't wait to see the finished product. So everyone out there, definitely check it out. Travel Channel, Expedition Bigfoot, Sunday night, 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Also check out Russell's books, Russell Acord. It's on Amazon. Is there a better place to buy it, or is Amazon the go-to place for that, Russell?
It's on Kindle and Amazon. That's the best place to go. I used to run a website and send them out of my house, but that got to where I was signing books and sending them.
Too much. It becomes too much.
Very time consuming. Yeah. And I'm actually working on the third book. It's a series, so I'm working on the third one. So once that one comes out, that'll be kind of fun.
Yeah, that'll be really cool. It's it's Footprints of a Legend, Bitterroot Series, Volume 1, and Bigfoot and the Tripwire, Footprints of a Legend, Bitterroot Series. It's Volume 2. Cool pictures on the book. So if you get a chance, check it out. Amazon, Russell Acord, check out his new TV show. And Russell, thanks for coming on, man.
Appreciate it. Those books are easier to find also if you just go to russellacord.com.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah. Everything's on that. It actually has the conference on there and everything. So just a nice one-stop shop.
Very cool. russellacord.com. Thanks again, Russ.
Hey, thanks for having me.